inside this room. There is no place to move or no place to breathe. So this is one challenge which the healthcare industry faces. So why it is important? Because once you have administered prices of, say, from Ayushman Bharat or GIPSA, which is insurance pricing, if the cost is not properly addressed, then it will lead to a situation where there will be heavy loss for the hospital. If you don't take into the DRG or level of severity, if you try to put the same price for all DRGs, somebody will come with a low end, the price will be fixed at low severity disease, whereas a patient will be of high severity. So there will be a cost overrun of 50%, which is not manageable. And the cost of the treatment is mostly determined by the patient's preferences. Somebody who wants to have a knee implant or a stent implanted, they may go in for either a low price implant or a high price implant depending on the age of the patient. If the patient's age is correct, if the patient's age is, say, very young, like 40, he may like to have a long life stent or an implant. Whereas if the patient is very much aged, he may like to have a lower price product. So let us quickly look at the international scenario. NHS is running the hospitals in UK. They are funded by the government, and they have a very high tax bracket. We all know the income tax rates in countries like UK, US, and say European countries. So the tax levels are very high, so they are able to fund it through them. Whereas the same is not so in India. Singapore is having a different level. They have a three-tier funding. And let us look at, this is the crux of the today's presentation. There are standard treatment guidelines which are provided by World Health Organization, which is followed across the world by all leading hospitals. So this treatment guidelines gives us the steps of what diagnosis to do, what treatment to do, and in any country we can arrive at the cost of doing those activities. So SDG talks about activities, and as a cost account we are supposed to work out the cost for different activities, which is nothing but activity-based costing. If you do it first time right, the cost is optimal. If the patient does not respond to your treatment, however well you treat him, you may have some drug allergies or whatever. So there will be some side reaction, then you are able to give another medicine. So the cost of treatment will go up. And how will you measure the cost of quality, which is actually a very difficult activity? You have to measure the clinical outcome and not just the services done. So if some patients acquire some infections while they are being treated in the hospital, which is unavoidable. It's controllable but unavoidable, like surgical site infection, drug allergies, patient fall, and so on. So all these adverse events, it leads to longer stay in the hospital and lead to a higher cost, which cannot be predicted like a standard cost. So how will you do the costing for the procedure, or how will you measure the outcome? So there are a number of ways. You can measure the survival rate, you can measure whether the person's organ has come back to normal. For example, if somebody has been undergoing dialysis, if he has undergone a kidney transplant treatment, whether he is able to pass urine normally and whether the creatinine levels are coming back to normal without the help of further dialysis. That is one way of arriving at the outcome by monitoring the restoration of function. Okay, whether the person has come back to normal life, whether he is able to, after the knee replacement surgery, if he is able to walk without a crutch or a stick or a walker. That is one way of looking at the measurement of outcome. So very soon the payment mechanism may move from procedure based to outcome based. So as a cost accountant, we are supposed to be aware of the changes that are happening in the environment and steer our organization towards meeting these requirements. So NHS, we are all aware, because a lot of buzz is created around the Prime Minister of UK resigning, Liz Truss resigning, and there is a huge budgetary deficit which we are facing, and part of the deficit is because of a deficit arising from healthcare. NHS is following a very robust system, but the thing is, because of things like war in Ukraine and the country's energy crisis, the crisis in healthcare is getting aggravated. So, what is the role of a cost accountant here? He has to arrive at the actual cost and find out the variance between the standard cost, which is the reimbursement basis. What NHS follows as a basis is the standard cost of actual treatment, whereas the actual cost is often higher. And the cost accountant is supposed to do a variance analysis and report to the NHS and give justification whether the standard itself has to be revised. So this is a black hole in the budget which UK government is now facing. There is a $60 billion black hole, and they can. What is all the more alarming is there were 30,000 deaths in England because patients were not able to get an appointment in the hospital, which is unheard of in India. Even during peak of COVID, people were able to go to the hospital. Somehow they were able to get a treatment, even for a non-pandemic thing like heart disease. UK with such a big infrastructure, they are not able to avoid 30,000 deaths. So a lot of people are now going for private hospitals in UK because they are not able to bear the waiting time, which is what Rishi Sunak has said as privatization through the back door. If you have a dental problem, you cannot go to the hospital because they will ask you to wait for a year or two. Even for a minor surgery, they will ask you to wait for a year or two. So what people do in UK nowadays is they pay much more money, go to some private hospital and get treated. Or if somebody is an Indian, they come back to India and pay money out of their pocket and get themselves operated upon. So this is what is happening. So I would not say it as a crisis, I would say it is an opportunity for cost accountants to chip in into this sort of piquant situation and help the organization out. And this is a short slide from Robert Kaplan. Let us go through it quickly in the interest of time. Yeah, we'll wrap it up. OPA architecture, profitability analysis. Any questions, please? Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bhargav. A quick statement to enable the participants to connect with the first session. You remember Sundaram sir's statement as well as Manoharan that healthcare tourism is going to take one of the drivers of the country towards a $5 trillion economy. So in that, a typical hospital sector will now take a strategic intent whether to set up a hospital for catering to a segment coming from abroad for treatment here, in which case the corresponding cost structure facilities offered will be as per this budgeting. Or if that hospital strategy, the way he showed the Kaplan's and Norton's thought process on strategic thinking in hospital, I don't want to focus on non-Indian sector, but I want to focus on affordable pricing. I want to put up a high-class clinical outcome cardiac hospital in somewhere in Pudukkottai and serving the market at the Ayushman Bharat prices. Then completely the budgeting process, the facility planning and all would be different. So that means what? The target segment, the target pricing, the type of facility creation would be making a big impact as a role for cost and management accounting in the healthcare sector. That is the sum and substance of Bhargava's presentation. Thank you, Bhargav, and this is how you connect his theme, his slides with the overall session. Beginning, you said. Now let's listen to Sukrut Mehta on the pharma sector, after which we'll have a question and answer session.
Thank you so much, Raman sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I know I'm between you and lunch, so I'll try to make this quick. So let us first begin by understanding what are the recent developments which has led to a complete change in the landscape for the pharmaceutical industry. If you look at the pharmaceutical industry in India, right from the 1940s, right, we first wanted to be self-sufficient in antibiotics. That was the entire aim. That in some way we would move from powders being given on roadsides to actual tablets and capsules and some kind of a structured and organized sector. We were able to achieve that by the 1980s, and we were self-sufficient in antibiotics and preliminary drugs. When you say preliminary drugs, that's the first drug you get whenever you are trying to be treated. It can be an antibiotic, an analgesic, anything that it can be an OTC or over-the-counter drug. We were self-sufficient in them for both APIs, which is the key ingredients, and the formulations, which is the medicine that we take, by the 1990s. Unfortunately, this was all based on purely cost-plus pricing. Now, when you do not have a base of an industry, when you are in the nascent stages of growing your economy and establishing your country, cost-plus pricing works like a gem. It helps us develop capabilities that we do not have. Unfortunately, leave it on for too long and it leads and it breeds inefficiencies. Because of cost-plus pricing, the higher my cost, the more value I would get in terms of the MRP. And that is where the previous price control regime of DPCO 1995, Drug Price Control Order 1995, led to a systematic erosion of API manufacturing capabilities in India. People who were inefficient were basically given higher prices of the API. The formulation manufacturers for using those were able to grow in terms of their MRP, but without actually growing in terms of efficiency and effectiveness by reaching more people. And this is the problem that plagued the Indian industry today, as well as during the 2008 Olympics of Chinese. Every time China sneezes, we run out of API.